Hello, YouTube. Today I'm going to be talking about Ms Hannah Payne. Ms Hannah Payne is the young female to my left. So, who is Hannah Payne? I will not be using words like alleged because Ms. Payne has already been judged and found guilty by a jury of her peers. Here is what Hannah Payne did. Hannah Payne has been sentenced to life in prison for murdering 62-year-old Kenneth Herring. That's Mr. Herring right there. Here's what happened. Miss Payne witnessed Mr. Herring sideswipe a tractor trailer, so she pulled her vehicle to the side of the road to wait for the police as a witness. And keep in mind that this took place 4 years ago. Miss Payne stood there on the side of the road. This all happened in 2019. Hannah Payne was on her way home from work when she saw an accident. A truck driven by Kenneth Herring, 62 years old, sideswiped a tractor trailer. Miss Payne was only supposed to be a witness on the scene of the tractor trailer incident. Miss Payne and Mr. Herring had never met. Later on at that incident, a man showed up with a badge saying he was an officer. Mr. Harrington got out of his vehicle and was walking around and probably checking the damage. The man who identified himself as an officer walked up to Mr. Herring, and Miss Payne claims that the officer then relayed to her that Mr. Herring was drunk. And so, before I go any further, let me say that the man who identified himself as an officer was not a police officer, but he was a correctional officer. And I'm not trying to downplay his job, but he was not a police officer. Miss Hannah Payne then walked back to her vehicle and was sitting on the driver's side talking on the phone to 911. Oh, yeah. She had gotten back into her vehicle, and Mr. Harrington has gotten back into his vehicle and is now revving the engine. Mr. Harrington pulls away from the scene of the accident. Miss Payne is on the phone with 911 and tells them that the cause of the driver of the other truck that hit the tractor trailer has left the scene. Miss Payne says the officer told her he was pointing in the direction of Mr. Harrington like he was telling her to follow Mr. Harrington. Miss Payne, still on the phone with 911, tells the dispatcher that Mr. Harrington has left the scene. And the dispatcher tells her not to chase him. But if you could take a picture of his tags, that would be helpful. Miss Hannah Payne is now chasing Mr. Harrington through the streets of Clayton County, Georgia. Miss Payne is driving erratic, jumping in and out of traffic, cutting people off. Lord have mercy, she could have caused the accident. So finally, she tells the 911 dispatcher that she has gotten close enough to get Mr. Harrington's tag number. She then gives the dispatcher Mr. Harrington's tag number, and the dispatcher again tells her not to chase Mr. Harrington. She tells her to return to the first scene of the crime. To the first scene of the accident, I'm sorry. That makes 4 times that 911 has told Miss Hannah Payne not to chase Mr. Harrington. That's 4 times. Mr. Harrington, since she had given him his number, since she gave the 911 dispatcher his tag number, she should have returned to the scene. But here's what Miss Hannah Payne did. Ms. Hannah Payne told 911 that she had gotten close enough to Mr. Harrington, so she was going to block him in. Again, the 911 dispatcher tells her, stay safe, don't chase him. And as she pulled up her vehicle in the front of Mr. Harrington, she blocked him in and he stopped. She blocked him in. So he had no other choice but to stop. She then jumps out of her vehicle, yelling and cussing at Mr. Harrington, telling him to get the F out of the vehicle. Mr. Harrington grabs Miss Payne's arm with her wrist. I believe he was in fear for his life because Mr. Harrington was unarmed. Mr. Harrington and Ms. Hannah Payne struggled back and forth. Ms. Payne was on the witness stand yesterday, and she testified that at that point, the gun that she had in her hand was not pointed at Mr. Harrington. That's what she said on the witness stand. But Mr. Harrington was shot in the stomach. And if her gun was not pointed at him and they were merely struggling over the gun, then Mr. Harrington would have been shot in the chest, or at least that's my opinion. Ms. Payne testified that her finger was never on the trigger. And that's what she said on the witness stand. Mr. Harrington was trying to take the gun from her. And he was actually accidentally shot himself. Here's the thing. When they fingerprinted the gun, Mr. Harrington's fingerprints were not found on the gun. The only fingerprints that were found on the gun belonged to Ms. Hannah Payne. His fingerprints were not on the gun. So, here's what Ms. Hannah Payne was arrested at the scene. And here's what Hannah Payne was charged with. Count 1, malice murder. She was found guilty. Count 2, felony murder. She was found guilty. Count 3, aggravated assault. She was found guilty. Count 4, felony murder. She was found guilty. Count 5, false imprisonment. She was found guilty. The false imprisonment came in because she blocked his pathway with her vehicle. Count 6, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. She was found guilty. And what I want to say is this. This young woman involved herself in something that had nothing to do with her. She was merely a witness on the scene. Mr. Harrington did not hit Ms. Hannah Payne's vehicle in the first incident. In the second incident, he had no other choice but to hit her vehicle because she parked in front of him. She jumped in front of him, blocking his path. Ms. Hannah Payne, at 25 years old, has been given a life sentence with the possibility of parole. May 7th, 2019, the day that changed the lives of two families forever. And I would like to thank the young people, or the people who were smart enough to pull out their video cameras and videotape the actions of Ms. Payne, because Ms. Payne wants everybody to believe that even though she was driving through the streets erratically, and even though she jumped out of her vehicle with a gun, that she approached Mr. Harrington in a calm manner, which I find that hard to believe, because witnesses testified that she had cut them off, trying to catch up to Mr. Harrington. And anybody with that much adrenaline rushing through their veins, driving through the street erratically, is not going to step out of their vehicle and approach somebody that they have been chasing in a calm manner. So I would like to thank the people who videotaped Miss Payne's actions, because if it were not for those videotapes, it would have been her word against his. And dead people don't speak. May 7th, 2019. Without the videos, it will be her word against his. And I would like to also say, Mr. Kenneth Harrington, you can now rest, because Mr. Kenneth Harrington, you can now rest because justice has been served. Hannah Payne has been sentenced to a life sentence with the possibility of parole. Now, I don't know how many years she has to do before she can get that parole, but a life sentence, she gonna be at least 75 years old if she have to do 50 years before she can get out of jail. And all this because she interjected herself into something that had nothing to do with her. Mr. Harrington did not hit her vehicle in the first incident. She was only a witness, and she decided to play judge, jury, and executioner because she killed this 62-year-old man who was suffering from a diabetic episode. She killed him. Being involved in a car accident does not necessarily mean a death sentence, but that's what Ms. Hannah Payne gave him. All right, guys, y'all stay healthy, y'all stay blessed, and this is just my reaction to the actions of Ms. Hannah Payne. Sometimes you think you're doing the right thing in your mind, and it ends up being wrong. This all happened 4 years ago when Hannah Payne was only 21. And at 21, this hot-headed young woman took the life of Mr. Kenneth Herring, 62 years old. All right, guys. Y'all stay healthy, stay blessed, and I'm out.